After the overnight success of Friday the 13th, Paramount was eager for a sequel. The Friday the 13th series became a lucrative cash cow for the studio, best known for huge franchises like Star Trek and Indiana Jones. The first Friday the 13th had such a small budget and reaped the rewards of a giant return. I believe it was more profitable than The Empire Strikes Back. Friday the 13th had a pretty definitive ending. With the death of Mrs. Voorhees and most of the cast, there is no clean way to continue the story. It was that shocking stinger at the end with Jason's slimy corpse pulling Alice down into the lake, a scene that many saw as a dream sequence that became the main impetus for the rest of the series. The film's director, Sean Cunningham, was against Jason as the new killer, feeling it added a supernatural tone to a grounded story. Initially, Cunningham wanted to do an unrelated anthology film that simply used the title as a theme for original stories. The directing reins were handed over to Steve Miner, and in the first sequel, Jason does in fact become the killer. It starts off with the final girl of the last film, Alice, getting killed off before we even get the credits. This always felt cheap because we spent the first movie rooting for Alice's survival. Also, it doesn't make a ton of sense logistically how Jason tracks her down to her apartment. Of course, if I'm looking at these films through the prism of logic, we'll be here for months. The meat of the film takes place 5 years later, where the camp is reopened, allowing for a new generation of counselors to return. The actual site of the first movie is closed off to visitors, but that doesn't stop our young new cast from sneaking off to catch a glimpse.
Look, when we get back to the city, we can tell everyone we were there. Oh, come on, you chicken shit.
The rest of the film is a retread of the first film. Tom Savini is notably absent this time, making for some memorable kills, but none of which have that same bloody flair of the first film. I think the fan favorite here is the wheelchair death, where handicapped counselor Mark takes a machete to the face and then bounces backwards down an endless flight of stairs. The filmmakers were still playing around with Jason's overall look at this point, so in part 2, he runs around with a burlap sack over his face. The sack only has one visible eye hole, so Jason appears disoriented and clumsy when we finally get to see him chasing his prey. There's also a dispute concerning who actually played Jason. Warrington Gillette, a stuntman, was given the actual credit. However, it was later revealed that an actor named Steve Daskowitz was also cast in the role. Apparently, both actors appear in the film, not that you'd be able to notice. To the best of my knowledge, Steve Daskowitz played Jason mainly when he had the sack on, running around during the chase scenes. Warrington Gillette played Jason unmasked toward the end of the movie, although actress Amy Steele has stated that Warrington Gillette was her Jason. I always appreciated how Part 2 adds a psychological element to the Jason myth. The final girl, Ginny Field, played by Amy Steele, is a budding psychiatrist who analyzes Jason's psyche and later uses reverse psychology against him.
It's more fun using that child psychology on you. You're such a sucker, Lauren.
This was pretty clever and one-ups it over its predecessor, making for a more thrilling climax. The one thing I never understood, and something that perplexes fans to this day, is the fate of Ginny's boyfriend, Paul.
Paul? Where's Paul?
Reportedly, actor John Fury didn't report to the set on the last day of filming, so I guess the assumption is that Jason killed him during his assault on Ginny. It's a minor thing, but it's never been resolved by the filmmakers. Over time, I've grown to like this one over the original, despite it being essentially a copycat. With the exception of Jason being the killer, the sequel doesn't add anything fresh. The absence of Tom Savini doesn't help, but the standoff between Jason and Ginny is what sells it. For what it's worth, it's about as good a sequel as they could have made.